Hi, I'm Hope, and this is my second video in my brand consultancy series. And today I'm going to be focusing on the Green Party. I wanted to make a quick disclaimer at the beginning of this that I view consultancy as not an exclusive fashion applicable skill. It has range, and its DNA allows it to be informed by the research you use, and the same routines and outcomes can be achieved. I'm also not naive in the notion that I can come up with an idea that can fix our political system, and this is just currently a theoretical outcome to one of my degree modules. I've learned what I know about politics by seeking out information on the internet and educating myself. It's a topic that I find confusing and complicated, which made me realize that there's probably a lot of young people and people in general who feel quite similar to me or are in my position. It feels like a space that you can't really comment in unless you know everything there is to know about it, which is incredibly daunting. So I thought I'd make a consultancy surrounding it. I'm going to begin with the context, so our current zeitgeist, the world we're all residing in, and how it feels completely dystopian, as though we're declining as humans and losing our connections through empathy and hope and love, and instead it's been replaced by this capitalist out for yourself, completely soul-crushing, doom-like society. The illegal war on Iran, the ongoing genocide of innocent Palestinians, the illegal deportations and murders carried out by ICE agents, immigrants consistently being the scapegoat for our economic issues, when in reality that's caused by the sheer difference in the richest of rich and the poorest of poor. Censorship in schools, like book bans being introduced, and the rise of red pill men and the manosphere in general, and the rhetoric they spew being platformed, the release of the Epstein files, the laws placed and up for debate on women's bodies, and the casual use of AI, not only environmentally but personally. It's inbuilt into almost everything you use now. We're losing our humanity to these machines and allowing them to do everything for us, when in reality our brain is a muscle and it needs to be used to be maintained, and convenience is becoming the death of us. All of these are examples of how dystopian and inhumane the nature of this world has become, and its effects on us as people, and how we constantly observe it and feel helpless because we suffer at the hands of those in a position of privilege and power, using things like exhaustion and confusion to their benefit, convincing us that we can't make change because we don't understand or know enough, when they don't make the efforts to explain it. Everything is hidden behind this invisible veil in order to protect them and stop the working class from having more of a say. Politics isn't a mandatory taught subject in schools, and it usually falls under citizenship, which in my school wasn't actually a topic, but like many, it meant our tutors put on a video for 15 minutes titled something like "What is Brexit?" and it would be politics explained, featuring animated people, and by the end of it, it was considered a topic that had been covered. The structure of politics is incredibly hard to grasp at any age and comes with a lot of layers and therefore confusion. We've now got a generation of people who have either taught themselves politics or haven't, and they're interested because no one taught them, or disinterested for exactly the same reason. Politics is an undercurrent in literally everything. It was once a taboo subject, maybe still a taboo subject for older generations and frowned upon discussing, but it's now becoming an open discussion amongst younger people using the internet in the way that they know how, hoping to learn and even educate other people because we don't see the system benefiting us. Now we've established context, we can move on to the Green Party. They are a left-wing political party focused primarily on environmental sustainability, social justice, and economic equality, led by Zach Polanski. They advocate for radical change in sectors such as climate change, public ownership of services, and a fair, livable future. Politics isn't as working class and diverse as I want it to be, Zach said on a podcast recently, asking people to get involved and help the party get to a better place instead of observing on the sidelines until they see Greens as the perfect party. He talks about how he loses people's attention when he mentions that they're a socialist party, instead speaking on what applies to people of the public, e.g., lowering bills, public ownership of services, taxes on multimillionaire and billionaires, always seems to engage more. They feel like a party of the people, prioritizing issues that affect the public en masse, addressing them head on without hiding behind a plethora of reasonings as to why they can't or what needs to be solved first in order to do it, built of people that the everyday working class can relate to, like Hannah, seeing younger candidates, platforms such as Dylan Law running for deputy mayor in Hackney or Zviko Chihora in Lambeth feels attainable, relatable, and conceivable to young people. Seeing individuals like ourselves in these change-making positions brings hope that the broken system we now live in can be ripped out from its foundations. Advocating for pressing issues that have a primary effect on us, such as homelessness, social housing, workers' rights. We're living in an age of political illiteracy as we don't have the foundations to teach politics to young people in place, making adults who are embarrassed and unsure of what they stand for and how to go about acting on their views, which is closely linked with the misinformation we're surrounded by, as social media is a main form of researching for younger people, leaving us vulnerable to being misinformed. Their current social media presence, the Green Party, and the transparency of it, I believe, is a big reason as to why the younger generation identify with them so heavily, because they cut everything that's unnecessary and talk in a language we all understand without overcomplicating who they are. We see them in the same places we see ourselves and the people we know and love, like taking the train, at protests, and in traditional trade jobs. The Greens need to continue this growth and establishment in the younger demographic. As I said, this demographic is the newest group of voters, which other parties seem to ignore or forget. And I believe the way to address this is through seeking out political literacy, which aligns with the Greens' values as a party and their social media posts as of late, tailoring their marketing in a way that helps and engages with their demographic. The next segment I'm going to talk about is related political news. Recent politics related to the Green Party have in fact been incredibly hopeful. Zoran Mamdani became the mayor of New York, and his obvious success in the States has been a refreshing context to the idea that everything America does, the UK follows suit. That notion stated when Donald Trump was elected felt alarmingly true, as we all saw the sharp rise in support for Reform UK, which shares similar extremist right-wing views on immigration and abolishing equal rights and so forth. Now Zach Polanski is regularly compared to the UK's own Mamdani. It seems the context has shifted. Having Hannah Spencer becoming the MP in Gorton and Denton felt like the opening floodgates of possibility. A seat held by Labour for over 100 years, which was overturned, is a historic moment. The event challenged presumptions and instilled the idea that hope can win despite other parties' questionable efforts. Seeing party leaders at political protests like House Against Hate enjoying themselves with the people of this country while still making brilliant points and listening to the public voice around them, taking time to stand amongst the people they represent, shows how their actions echo their words, which was evident in recent polling numbers compared to 6 months ago. I believe a lot of this support is due to how the Green Party presents itself both online and in person. The Green Party's Instagram is loud and speaks on topics they believe in, but Zach Polanski's personal account is where we see this manifest more personally. featuring on podcasts, commenting on topics other politicians avoid or give obstructing answers to, holding events and interviewing, interacting with everyday people. He's built this following by showing us who he is as an individual and how he contributes to the party and system he is a part of, similar to Zoran Mamdani in this way, presenting himself as human, and his priorities concerning humanity, love, hope, individuality, community, honesty, reliability, and how they're all pillars that translate in the behind the scenes of everything he does. He's building this affinity members of the public have toward him through explanation and justification, ensuring we always understand the reason as to why he does things and showcasing his duality to talk about important issues but also remain lighthearted at times. The official Green Party is less playful, which is understandable but still relatable and easy to disseminate information from. I pitch for there to be a conscious decision made to include longer versions of said videos to discuss topics in more detail in a podcast or conversational format on YouTube, with more context or help in a step-by-step manner, examples, and so on. As Hannah said herself, knowledge is power, and creating an online space in which knowledge is accessible is building the foundations to informed voters. When social media has an undeniable hold on the public, more specifically Gen Z and younger, this decision for lengthier videos is to encourage young people to be mindful of their brain and how they use it. These videos' aims would be to help the public at a base level of politics, the working class, and people who are not in a position of privilege to be taught this information, learning from public figures and social media. YouTube hasn't been capitalized by any party really, with highs of 140k subscribers, but Green has done so the least, with only 30k in February. My proposition would be to use this untapped resource, as well as their Instagram page, which has almost 20 times the amount of engagement their YouTube channel has, to launch a sister series surrounding politics. This brings me to the core of this consultancy, which is to make politics digestible. The address point I'm attempting to make with this idea and its purpose is to make politics digestible and therefore accessible to everyone, but specifically a younger generation who has little to no experience with it yet. And in order to do that, we need to begin at the beginning, the foundations and the political nuances of them in a way that is comprehensible, breaking down the system with specific topics, questions, benefits, roles, etc. For example, what is the role of an MP? How would I apply for a council property? How does someone declare themselves as bankrupt? How do I apply for a British visa? The information is out there, but can feel daunting due to the format it's presented in, meant to overwhelm and confuse people with the eventual goal that they give up on seeking these said things out. I think the formal language used in the political climate creates a barrier for a lot of people, assumptions that politics doesn't serve them, isn't for them, the politicians in power don't understand who they are because they're so far removed from the life they lead. The feeling of despair and distrust of political parties spans across generations, and the options feel overwhelming when you don't know everything you think you need to. As I quoted Zach earlier, politics is received best when portrayed in a language that everyone can understand. Due to this oversaturation in the media and the contrasting news reports, misinformation, smear campaigns supported by the government, it's hard to decipher what's true and what isn't, especially when politics isn't a topic you're well versed in. YouTube and Instagram are the tools I would use to market these foundations on established platforms where you can find this information on a regular basis for anyone who feels so inclined. Acknowledging what is hidden from us or not taught, ways in which we can pursue or provide help or understanding through new topics and audience engagement on how politics makes its way into every facet of life. It would be spearheaded by creators who align with the Green Party personally and publicly, to remind us of how interconnected we all are and how that matters above all else. Who is What Zara Loves and what is her effect on short form media? Taboo on the Bus by Zara McIntosh is a series of video podcasts discussing taboo and thought-provoking topics while sat at the front of the bus, such as pop culture, society, queer issues and culture, honestly sharing her opinion, e.g. the pressure placed on women as they age, the resurgence of analog, AI and the ethics behind it on platforms like Instagram, Substack and Spotify. The nature of her podcast aligns with the Green Party's tone of voice, candidness and transparency. With the world's current climate, these videos allow for humanness, relatability and patience. Her audience is extremely engaged young adults who asked for longer versions of the episodes, which led to the podcast format of the series, Taboo Off the Bus, which are 40 minutes long, roughly. Using publicly owned services and making the most out of them embodies a main principle of the Green Party, emphasizing the use it before you lose it mindset. As a presenter, podcaster, physical media enthusiast who has outwardly supported the Green Party, I believe she'd be a brilliant collaborator to expand their younger supporters further. Along with her podcast like Ep, she makes shorter versions for Instagram, which are incredibly engaging, feels current and built for a generation with a declining attention span that is education and thought-based, encouraging viewers to take time to stop and take in what's being discussed. As I said previously, knowledge is power, confusion is used as a tactic against you. Content like Zara's is a perfect starting point to reclaiming your mind. Acknowledging this information and building on it, I would collaborate with Zara for the first part of this two-part political foundation project. Zara would be responsible for the short format series posted on her own Instagram and the Green Party's, remaining the same in its foundation as Taboo on the Bus's style content, as it fits the Green Party's message, as discussed previously, but titled Zara Loves Green as a play on her username. The subject matter would range, but politics would be a much heavier theme in a broader way, e.g. what's new in the political climate, breaking down the knock-on effects of actions in a way that's simple and straightforward without disguising or attempting to confuse people, as that's a massive political tactic to keep working class voices from weighing in as they feel misplaced in politics. She would also discuss other topics at surface level, e.g. student loans, how to make CVs, abortion avenues and rights, birth control, availability, council housing opportunities, renters' rights, voting, GP alternatives, free TFL qualifications, council tax, immigration options, maternity and paternity leave entitlement, ADHD and autism awareness, as well as diagnosis avenues and so on. But also things such as recommended reading lists to stay informed in our current society, recommended hobbies, budgeting tips, exercise made easy. So it still feels light for the mind, but you're learning and engaging with new themes and activities to help in the world we're all currently trying to navigate. That brings me on to the second part of the project and the context to that being podcast culture and long-form media. Podcasts are a very popular and fairly new form of mainstream media that is only due to grow in popularity. I believe them to have the potential to be the perfect breeding ground for lengthening attention spans whilst discussing thoughtful issues, with news and politics being one of the most popular topics amongst podcasts. The younger generations, 15 to 24, are beginning to get back into the world of podcasting, and it still remains popular amongst the 25 to 34-year-olds and only growing within the 54-plus demographic. It's a blanket format of media which can appeal to almost anyone. It's quite common for celebrities and influencers to have a podcast, which works in favour of the second part of my political foundations pitch, as it essentially means that each of their own target demographics would cross over with any podcast the Greens would launch and feature guests on. There's a rise in franchising amongst podcasting. For example, the Fellas Studio owns and produces a network of popular podcasts such as Chloe versus the World, Saving Grace, and The Fellas, which covers similar media and formats under the same umbrella. But it's not abnormal to have interlinked media outlets with different hosts and specific nuances. As Bold Politics by Zach Polanski already exists, I believe this sister program proposal would mimic the framework of interdependent podcast arrangements. This leads to the formal presentation of the second part of this pitch, which is a podcast launched on YouTube led by Jamila Jamil. It would follow on from Zara Loves Green, elaborating on topics she discussed earlier in the week in depth, so as not to overwhelm viewers with introducing the topic, which Zara would do, and educating them on it and its particulars, which Jamila would do. Also bringing on influencers and guests who have footholds with specific demographics and audiences. It would focus on experiential conversation, personal nuances on topics brought up by Zara that the specific guest can comment on, but in discussion with Jamila. So we're given a baseline understanding by Zara earlier in the week, ready to go into this podcast set up by Jamila understanding the topic at hand, and therefore some of the questions and answers in discussion. In a similar way that Zoran Mamdani navigates social media, how he recently had a conversation with Cardi B about free childcare and humanized her as a mother rather than as Cardi B. It felt relatable, which is the end goal of this podcast, for the public to understand and see themselves in others. I just want to take a moment to delve a bit deeper into why I believe Jamila Jamil to be the perfect creator to lead the second half of the Foundations of Politics. She's an English actress, presenter, activist, and an interviewer in her early career, now a public figure on social media. who speaks out on societal commentary and political currency. She has her own podcast, Wrong Turns, where dignity goes to die, and guests along with herself tell stories without judgment, which she's not been active on for about 3 months due to her focus on speaking on other platforms as opposed to producing and editing for her personal YouTube account. Jamila is well versed in interviewing and knows how to guide a room and conversation well when needed, but also has the duality to maintain humorous and light-hearted tones when the topics call for it, creating a conversational, anecdotal atmosphere where participants can bounce off one another. She's brilliant at making politics understandable and digestible, which is the whole aim of this consultancy. The last major topic I want to discuss is possible guests. The guests I would have on would reflect real-world people, influencers that don't put barriers between themselves and the public, who speak on issues they're passionate about and use their platforms to do so, remaining informed and refusing this trope of becoming out of touch that a lot of people who gain popularity on social media follow. Each have their own target audiences and ways of reaching them, and in some way or another aligns with the Green Party or could benefit others by speaking about their experiences in association with the party. For example, Joe Bloom could feature in a segment about human connection. Why do we value hearing personal first-hand experiences? And does that encourage empathy and understanding? Why did he start A View from a Bridge? And does he see that project developing into something new or collaborating with anyone in the near future? What does he hope it brings to others, and what does it bring for himself? Another potential guest could be Jim Skin and his brother Tommy, as well as their cameraman. They recently featured on the Sidemen YouTube channel and are known streamers on Kick, which is a controversial streaming platform, but considered a positive role model for young men in our current climate. He's a gym enthusiast and has acknowledged a previous unhappiness with his self-image and experience of homelessness before pursuing streaming as a career path. Liked due to his wholesome, authentic personality, the positivity he exudes, the healthy brotherly bond he portrays, the male friendships he has, and the engagement he holds with his fans. He exists in a realm of red pill misogynistic men and has even been on stream with the likes of HS Tiki Toki. It would be really interesting to talk to him about how he got into this line of work and why. Does he view himself as a role model for younger men? What is the goal of his content, and why does he believe people respond so well to it, both men and women? And why does he associate himself with other streamers who don't advertise the same values and views that he seems to? I would use the same approach with others like Cody Darla, with whom the Green Party already collaborates, Jordan Stevens, presenter Sorrell, running influencer Scotty, Davina McCall, and so on. Each of these episodes wouldn't outright discuss politics, but acknowledges that politics resides in everything and informs everything, that understanding specific circumstances and experience of others, as well as examples, makes knowledge applicable when encountered again. So in summary, the hope would be that this two-part system would break down politics and allow members of the public to seek out education in a trusted place and therefore begin to identify where their problems truly stem from. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen.